Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christian Jack. I have generated over $100 million in high ticket sales, and this channel is all about helping you get to 100K a month as a salesperson in straight commissions, not talking about any of that base crap or draws or any sort of equity or shit like that. We're talking pure 1099 commission only, and this is how we do it. So today we're going through a topic that I'm quite passionate about. I am very excited to go through it because it's one of the really enjoyable things that I get to do on a day-to-day basis. In addition to, of course, running the Sales Dojo, my training community that's like low ticket. If you just want to kind of get to know me and learn some really powerful things in there, you can go in there. But another thing that I do that not a lot of people know about, because there are a lot of NDAs involved with it, and I purposefully do that on my end, is my one-on-one coaching. Now, I can't talk too much about the people who are in there, the offers that they're on. You know, I can talk a little bit about how much they're making, but I can't go into too many details. But what I can go into today is the exact process that I use in order to take them from where they are when they come with me, which is generally a minimum of 30K a month in commissions, all the way up to my highest student this last month made 122 grand in commissions. So, there is a very specific process that we go through, and it's pretty much the same for everybody. There are some subtle nuances inside of it. However, this is what has consistently been working for top performers in the space, and this is the actual step-by-step process that I take them through in order to get them from 30K a month in commissions to over 100 grand a month in commissions as a sales rep. And this isn't selling any sort of crazy high-end packages or anything like that. It's a basic high-ticket offer. That guy who made 122 grand last month is selling an offer that ranges anywhere from 7K to 20K. So it's nothing wild. It's not like he's selling 70, 100, 150K packages like I was at one point. It's very simple, kind of normal packages, nothing really out of the ordinary. So let's dive into what we actually cover. The first step that we actually go through is a full personality and behavior profiling assessment. So we do this through a lot of different ways. I'm not going to give you the exact tests that we take. However, it does combine a few different things that you may have heard before, things like the DISC profile, things like, I don't even want to go too much into that, but we measure a lot of different things. Number one, we want to understand who this person is from a like personality type kind of profile. We do a massive deep dive into childhood trauma, decision-making, reward pathways, how they made friends as a kid, how they sought connection from authority, all those sorts of different things. We also go deep into their decision-making processes, how they validate their decisions, what sort of research process they go through. Are they more of like the analytical research type and take their time with decisions, or are they somebody who just like wants to go for it? There's a lot of different things that we cover in here, as well as a proprietary test that's actually been developed over the past 30, 40 years or so at this point, that accurately predicts to a 1%, what's the word? To like 1% accuracy, basically 99% accuracy, I guess would be the way that you say it. 99% accuracy, how naturally apt somebody is for sales, and specifically different types of sales. So selling different things, what sort of learnability score they have, are they open to learning new things all the time, or are they like rather just kind of stick in their own lane and do the same thing? Or, what kind of economic drive do they have? What sort of self-ownership do they have? This one goes pretty in depth. It's about an 80-page report. It's very, very expensive to run. And like I said, it is proprietary. So I can't really discuss too much about it. However, if you're a one-on-one student, you get it. So enjoy. Once we actually go through this full assessment, what I actually end up doing is I build them a custom GPT based on their own profile and their own personality, the things that they struggle with, the things that they excel at, as well as all of the information that we go through with the behavior profiling analysis. So this goes into their social needs and what their values are and how they make decisions on a day-to-day kind of perspective. In social situations, when they're alone by themselves, different circles that they have inside of these concentric social circles, if you will. So we basically build them a personalized custom GPT coach that they can go to anytime and get any of their questions answered about any sort of decisions that they're making, and see any sorts of biases that they might have, things that they might be inserting that aren't actually there, fears, anytime they're feeling emotional about things, where that emotion might be actually coming from. There's a lot that goes into this, and they can use it anytime, but honestly, I strongly recommend that they don't use it. I recommend that they bring it to me first, and then I can recommend to them if they can go and use that, or if we can just kind of deal with it on the call. Sometimes, AI doesn't necessarily do the best at therapy, as an example, and sometimes we just need to be together for that. So that's the first thing that we do. It's kind of intense. It takes a couple of weeks to really build this out fully. However, once it's done, I'm sure you can imagine just the level of use cases that can come from this. So that is step one. Step two from there is then taking a look at their opportunity, their sales calls, where they have more ability to squeeze more from the lemon per se, right? Is it something in their process that they're missing? Is it a sales skill that they maybe just haven't developed? Is it just how they're taking calls? Is it their personality maybe getting in the way? There's a lot of different things that can kind of go on from there. And once I'm able to review usually 5 to 10 sales calls from them, it takes a few hours for me. I'm able to identify what are the biggest things that they need to work on right now that would actually bring the biggest lift in their commissions. And then we get to work on that. Now, once we get to work on that, there's a lot of variables, right? There's the quickness with which somebody actually applies what we're going through and what we're learning and implements it and, takes the feedback and runs with it, essentially. There's people who maybe they don't feel comfortable doing that yet because it's something brand new to their process. Some people are able to take just little bite-sized chunks. Some people are able to just completely change their process overnight. So there's a lot of different things that go into this, but anytime that I'm coaching somebody and giving them things to do, I am very cognizant of all of the previous work that we've done in regards to their personality, their behaviors, their childhood situations, all that sort of stuff, in order to actually coach them in the way that they need to be coached. See, that's the thing that a lot of people never actually learn about. They never go down the path of learning how to actually teach somebody something or learning how to actually coach somebody on something. They just go through and they, figure out what worked for them, and then they just teach other people that thing. However, different people react differently to different styles, different methods, different ways of teaching, different ways of gaining new knowledge. There's so much that goes into that, that I've literally spent years going over this. I was actually a teacher before I got into sales, and it was what my entire 4-year degree was about. So I've gone through that process. I understand it. And I've done it even more with high level coaches like Ed Milet, who's considered the best mindset coach in the entire world, as well as many, many other people, in order to really understand this concept of how to truly coach somebody else. So I can't go too deep into that because obviously some of that is kind of the secret sauce. It's what people pay for. And ultimately it would just take me days upon days to teach you about it here. So I'm just going to kind of skip past that for now. If you want to learn more about it, just hop in the dojo, ask me a question on Q&A, and I can answer it for you. Now, once we figure out what it is that their biggest bottleneck is in terms of their process and how we can kind of bridge that gap and get them to the place where it is maybe no longer the bottleneck the fastest, then we start to work on that. We start implementing it on our calls. We always keep a running doc of current calls and recording so that I can keep going through and seeing what they're working on, see how they're implementing things, getting feedback. And lots of times at this point, we start to focus on one really big thing I have noticed in sales is some people are making 30, 50, 60K a month, but they're not able to get to 100K a month because they don't understand how to play with the balance of emotion versus logic. All right. So you may have heard the saying that sales are made by emotion, or people make decisions emotionally and then they justify those decisions with logic. However, what usually ends up happening is as somebody starts to understand how to move somebody emotionally and they start going through the call, focusing on that, then they start to throw out logic completely and they just run the call based off of emotion. So this is where a lot of people come in if they're making 50, 60 grand. This is typically where they are. If they're at 30, we still need to work on this a bit. But the first thing that we often work on for 30K monthers is getting them to understand that people's words are simply externalizations of the things that are going on inside of their head, of these internal things, right? And what is probably going to be more powerful is, rather than going after the symptom or this externalization, aka their words, and trying to do like logic traps and wordplay and asking questions based off the words that they say, what we want to focus on is asking questions and probing and clarifying based off of the internal mindset that somebody has that is producing those words. And so we start asking questions around that, and we get much deeper into the emotions of the call much more quickly and much more efficiently. All right. That is usually what gets somebody from 30 to 50K a month, usually. Sometimes there's people who are just lazy and they're not working. Some people don't have a system. Some people, we need to give them a VA and train up the VA on how to operate with things. But it varies quite a bit. But that is often, I'd say probably 5 times out of 10, that's usually what it is. Once people are at 50K a month, they've now understood and they've, I wouldn't say mastered, but gotten much better at the ability to go after that internal emotion, that internal mindset, if you will, that internal dialogue, rather than the external dialogue that they're telling you on the call, right? So they've gotten good at that. However, what usually ends up happening at this point is the only deals that they're losing are due to logistical objections, trust in the company, all these sorts of things, which typically are more logically based. And what is really funny about this is, whenever I teach people about that internal versus external conversation, they run with it, they implement it, it feels great at first because it's really sexy, right? It's somebody going through and being able to get to the real emotions of a conversation much more quickly, much more efficiently, much more powerfully. And so, of course, the call just ends up being a bit more emotional, and it feels good as a closer to be able to lead somebody through that conversation. And that's like what you've always been taught is the good thing to do, right? However, once you do that, you start to notice these logical objections coming up and you don't really know how to deal with them. And so then you end up coming back to me and you're like, Christian, this is great. I love it. However, now I'm getting these objections and I can't really deal with them. Like, they don't make sense. That these people are, may use the B word or the P word or something like that. But usually they come back frustrated at that point. And it's at that point which we really start to focus on this idea of playing with the balance of logic versus emotions. And you can't just have one. And usually once we teach people how to go deep into the emotions very quickly with that external versus internal discussion, they just start going ham on the emotions, which is fantastic. Like, it's a good thing to learn. And I think, again, it is the thing that really closes the deal. However, you will still come across people who don't operate that way, and you'll end up getting yourself in trouble and not closing as many deals as you could. And so then we start to have this conversation about logic versus emotions, how to play with them, how to make them interchange into each other, and how one leads into the other, and back and forth. And so that's where we start really focusing on this interplay in primarily the discovery section, and focus on a really specific syntax that I've developed over the years with all these one-on-one students and with myself and with different offers I've worked with that hits 99.9% of the time. It hits really, really hard. And I'm not going to go too deep into it. If you want to learn it, you can join the dojo. Down in the description, there's a link to join and get 7 days access for free. See if you like it, see if you enjoy it. And at the end of the day, if you don't, then what's the worst that can happen? You can just go ahead and leave. You haven't lost any money. But who knows, if you do like it, it may just be the last sales training you ever need. Now, when we go through this, inside of the dojo, it works like a belt system, right? You start with white belt, then yellow, then green, blue, purple, brown, and black. And each belt unlocks a new layer to this process. I do teach it all inside of the dojo. It just takes time for you to unlock it because not everybody is ready for it at the front end, right? And even if you think that you're ready for it, if you do think that you're ready for it, that probably is a great indicator that you're actually not, because there's a lot of things that go into it, from hypnosis to embedded commands to trial closes to pattern interrupts to all sorts of different things. And it's a fairly advanced process. So you need to know how to do all of the parts individually, let alone actually putting them together and making it flow smoothly as an operator. So anyway, we go through the whole process of teaching them for that entire discovery. And then there is a specific process that we go through for the emotional part of the call with the future pace, or, ideal life, whatever you like to call it, like the emotional future pacing, vision of the future, etc., as well as the emotional future of the consequences, the cost of inaction, all those sorts of things we do go through. And again, there's a very specific process. There's a very specific way to do things. One key nugget that I will give you for free in this video is the more that you can introduce sensory inputs, the more powerfully the emotional part of the call is going to hit. So sensory inputs as in your 5 senses. So your vision, your hearing, your feeling, your smelling, and what is the last one? Sight, sound, smell, touch. Why am I blanking? There's a 5th one, whatever it is. The 5 senses. You can tell that I don't really even, use that one. That's going to bug me. I'm just going to edit this part out. But let's see here. How far are we in? 15 minutes in. Okay. What are the 5 senses? Sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch. Taste. God damn. All right. So the 5 senses obviously are sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste. Now, taste and smell, you're probably not going to use nearly as much unless you're on an offer where like that can make sense, or maybe their dream involves that, standing out on the beach, feeling the spray of the sea, like tasting the salt in the air, whatever, like weird stuff. But generally, when you are painting a picture with people and you're wanting them to experience emotions, what you can actually do is, instead of just like imagining those emotions in the future, you can bring those emotions into the present and ask them, like, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? How would that feel, etc. And your brain doesn't actually distinguish any difference between feeling feelings in the now versus feeling feelings in the past versus feeling feelings in the future. And it all just happens in the moment. So if you're watching this video and I tell you, imagine, back when, maybe you were a kid and you were living with your parents, and, you came home from school and, your mom had this pot of spaghetti out on the burner, and she was mixing in the sauce, and you can smell like that warm kind of salty aroma of the spaghetti noodles cooking, and you could smell the mixture of the tomato paste with, the meatballs that are cooking over in the side pan, and this herby Italian kind of sweet, kind of savory smell. As I describe that to you and you're imagining it in your brain, even though it happened in the past, your brain does not know the difference. And so it actually experiences those feelings as if it was happening now. And there are some very well-written books and authors around all of this. Neville Goddard, primarily, when it comes to like feel the feeling of the wish fulfilled as if now. That is essentially what I teach my one-on-one guys on how to do and how to bring up in somebody in the moment on a sales call, in both the positive sense and the negative sense. So the positive, obviously, with the like future vision, the goals, aspirations, all that kind of good stuff. And then with the negatives being the consequence section, cost of inaction, all that kind of good stuff. And so by doing all of this, we run the front end of the call in a very, very powerful way. We implement lots of different things from covert behavior and influence and persuasion and all that kind of fun stuff. And then we also usually end up writing a custom pitch for their offer for different packages and different things, teaching them how to, of course, incorporate all the different things that we all know and love, like temp checks and checking for agreement and all that kind of good stuff. And then we go through the closing, and really the closing is simple from there. You don't really get many objections. When you do, you know exactly how to handle them. There's a basic framework that I teach in the dojo for that called the CIT framework. And actually, if you want to watch that video, it should be linked here in the video, and you can go and watch my training on that. But hopefully this has shed some light on if you are really wanting to get to the place where you can make 30, 50, 100K a month as a commission-only 1099 sales rep, then there is a path, and it is fairly simple. There are lots of things that go into it, but at the end of the day, it is a process. And if you want to learn how to do it, and you want to talk to me about what that might look like, then go ahead and join the dojo with the link down below, and you can join for 7 days for free. Ask your questions. Again, if you like it, maybe it'll be the last sales training you ever need. I'll see you inside.